once again to our show that is called Real Shame, where we watch movies that we probably should have seen, but we haven't, and now we're doing it for your viewing pleasure, hopefully. I'm Adam.
I'm Andy.
And we're like, well, this is like our 150th episode, right?
This is 150th, which is crazy to me.
Yeah, it's crazy. And you know, on these...
I wasn't sure we'd make it past 10. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine. You would have killed me by episode 10. With my review on Kicking and Screaming, you're like, that's it. No more with this guy.
I don't want to do that anymore.
You're like, you hate The Graduate. You didn't like Kicking and Screaming. It's done. The show's over. But on these kind of momentous, maybe, episodes, we like to choose big movies that we haven't seen. And this one is no joke? Yeah, this one falls into that line. But before we talk about that movie that you know of because of the title of the show, let's talk about what we've been watching like we always do. So I'm going to toss it over to you, Andy. What have you been watching?
Well, because the movies that we watched for this week are very long,
Yep.
I didn't have a lot of time to watch anything else. Although I did watch what you've watched,
Yep.
but I'll mention it whenever you mention it. But I watched a movie called, and you're going to be like, why did you watch this movie? And The Roommate on Netflix. It's on Netflix. So there I am. I'm scrolling through Netflix, right? I'm looking for something to watch, and it's like your last chance to watch this is like the end of this month.
They do that?
Like yeah, they take
Okay.
away movies and stuff occasionally. And I'm not going to beat around the bush, all right? I think Minka Kelly's pretty hot.
Yeah.
And Minka Kelly's in it. So I was like, all right, I'm going to watch it. I'm sure it's going to suck.
Yeah.
But it's like single white female, you remember
Yeah.
Single White Female with Bridget Fonda and Jennifer Jason Leigh from a long time ago. It's like the PG version of
Yeah.
that. Because I'm pretty sure that's an R-rated film.
We tried to watch that this week. We got 10 minutes into Single White Female and
Really?
didn't get any further.
Okay. Was it your choice or Kirby's choice?
Kirby's choice.
Kirby's like, no more.
Yeah.
Okay.
She was like, I remember this
I
movie being
don't
interesting.
remember Single White Female being like an amazing film,
Yeah.
but I remember it being kind of fun, just for a crazy, wacky roommate kind of thriller. And so I was hoping The Roommate would be the same, and I think Minka Kelly is attractive. So I watched it. It sucks. It's not good.
Not even Minka Kelly could save it.
No, well, I mean, yeah, she's hot or whatever, but it wasn't. That didn't make it a good movie. Sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, what hurts it, first of all, is it's PG.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure Single White Female's rated R, so
Yeah.
it can be more violent. Because I remember in Single White Female, there's like death by high heel, like in the eye or something
that's
like
cool.
that. It's kind of gory in parts. This movie has none of that because it's PG. I mean, really, this movie's so ridiculously tame. First of all, I think that hurts it. I also think that it just has a poor story and poor development. But yeah, it should have been PG. A movie like this with a psycho roommate who's supposed to be like a killer is like obsessed with her roommate. It should be more violent, more gory, more all those things. It was none of those things. It was just this, and tons of needle drops and music, pop music, forgettable pop music.
This seems to be the day.
But it's a crappy movie. But that's what I watched on Netflix. I'm a shallow guy. Sorry, I was like Minka Kelly. All right, I'll watch it, and I did. So, what have you been watching?
Speaking of movies with bad stories, no.
Did this movie have Minka Kelly in it? No, it didn't.
But it does have has Sofia Coppola in it.
It does.
So this week we're reviewing the Godfather movies. And spoiler, we're watching the first two movies for the podcast.
The main two. The big two. Yeah.
And, there's one more that's part of that makes out the trilogy, right? So
what's the trilogy?
I decided to watch the third Godfather movie.
I also watched that, but I said I would wait until you said it.
Yeah. I mean, I had bottom of the barrel expectations because I've heard so many bad things about it. And what people say is right. I mean, it's not as good as the first two and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of just like middling and just kind of like feels thrown together. And if you read the behind the scenes stuff, like Francis Ford Coppola didn't have a whole lot of time to prep and to write the movie and all that kind of stuff. Al Pacino is getting really bit into his over the topness of it. He would win an Academy Award for what's the one where he smells people? Son of a Woman. He does, right?
What's the one where What's the one where he smells people? I like that. I want to go to the video store. There's hardly any video stores, but I would love to go to the video store and be like, what's that movie with Al Pacino where he smells people? And they're like, what? Because I get this image of him like a dog, like sniffing people's butts or something. He's smelling people. Okay. Sin of a woman, yes. Yeah.
But he's getting into his sin of a woman phase of his career where he's like really over the top in this movie.
Yeah.
So, I don't think Sofia Coppola is as bad as everyone says she is.
Man, she came under all kinds of fire for that. Yeah.
So,
I don't think she's that bad either. And it's not like she has like a giant role.
Yeah.
If she had to carry the movie, then I could see how people would be like, "Oh my God, why did they cast her in this really, really demanding leading role?"
She's like in like 20% of the movie.
She's not in a whole lot of the movie.
Yeah,
honestly.
And and the fixer guy, his consigliere who's in the first two movies, Robert Duvall, wouldn't come back because he didn't, they weren't going to give him a raise.
He is missing
and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like that hurts the movie because it's just, I don't know. I think a lot of the behind the scenes stuff kind of made the third Godfather just not as good as it could have been. And, the fact that it's like, filmed 20 years later and all that kind of stuff. So we both watched the regular version of The Godfather Part 3. I did purchase Coda, the recut of it.
Yes.
So I'm curious to check that out. I feel like after, 9 hours of The Godfather, I couldn't put myself through it quite again. So maybe in a month or so, I will revisit Coda. I hear it just really changes like the front and the back of it, like the bookends. So, but I'm curious to check that out.
So I have seen all three Godfathers before, but I was much younger when I saw them. Again, saw all three of them sometime in the 90s. So I have not watched any of them since then. And I feel like I agree. Godfather Part 3, and this is most people's consensus, is that Godfather Part 3 is far inferior to the first two Godfathers. I do agree with that statement. I actually don't think it's that bad. I
think it's like 70% of the movies.
I think that it's, for me, it's kind of like watching Bad Boys for Life or Trainspotting 2. It's kind of fun seeing these characters again over a decade later. It's not quite the same as that original thrilling, Trainspotting or take your pick, whichever Bad Boys 1 or 2 that you like. It's probably not as good as either one of the first two or whatever. But it's still kind of fun to see where these characters are at. I do agree with you. Al Pacino is starting to get more into his over the top, hammy kind of performance in Godfather 3. Just when he's out, they keep pulling him back in, and all that stuff. But I tend to give. I treat Godfather Part 3 with kid gloves, honestly. Like, I don't think it's that bad, but I also would like to watch will watch the Coda, the recut kind of, because Coppola wanted to call it The Death of Michael Corleone, and they were like, hell no, you're not calling it that. Yeah. Call it Godfather 3, but now this is called Coda or whatever, and it does have somewhere in there The Death of Michael Corleone. In there. So yeah, I would like to watch the recut version just to see, and probably we'll do that fairly soon. But anyway.
All right. Yeah, that's what we've been watching. Now, obviously from the title and what we talked about, what we're reviewing this week. So why not jump into that and talk about our feature review, which is
so adapted from the novel by Mario Puzo. It's the first part, as I hold up two fingers, it's the first part of the saga of the Corleone family. For our 150th episode, we had to do it. It's The Godfather.
It's The Godfather.
Godfather.
What's the matter? What's bothering you? I'll handle it. I told you I can handle it. I'll handle it.
I knew that Santana was gonna have to go through all this. And Fredo was, and I never wanted this for you. I worked my whole life. I don't apologize to take care of my family. And I refused to be a fool. Dancing on the string held by all those big shots. I don't apologize, that's my life, but I thought that But when it was your time, that you would be the one to hold the strings. Senator Corleone, Governor Corleone, something.
Another pezzo 90.
All right, so Godfather was adapted from a book by Mario Puzo, written in 1969. It was written for the screen. The screenplay was adapted by Mario Puzo, as well as the director, Mr. Francis Ford Coppola. You might have heard of him. Of course, I mean, again, I didn't go to like a big synopsis of the film. I think most people have seen The Godfather. It's a very, very well-known American film. Huge cast. Marlon Brando plays the Godfather.
Yeah.
Vito Corleone. Al Pacino plays his son. Michael Corleone, his other son, is played by James Caan, Sonny. Robert Duvall plays kind of the adopted son. He's the consigliere, or the advisor, the counselor, Tom Hagen. John Cazale, whose life was cut short in the late 70s, plays Frito Corleone. Sterling Hayden, who we saw in The Long Goodbye. He's the gruff writer that Elliot Gould is kind of searching for. He plays the corrupt Captain McCluskey. Rounding out the cast, you've got Richard Conte as Barzini, Diane Keaton, Woody Allen mainstay Diane Keaton as Kay Adams, Abe Vigoda, yes, Abe Vigoda as Tessio, Lenny Montana, huge Lenny Montana, plays Luca Brasi, who winds up sleeping with the fishes, as we all know. Yep. And finally, Talia Shire plays Connie. Talia Shire is, of course, related to Francis Ford Coppola. That's his sister. She is the aunt of Nicolas Cage and Sofia Coppola, and she's the mother of Jason Schwartzman. Jason Schwartzman, the actor. Yeah, you all know that. All right, so that's all the cast. I mean, there's plenty others. There's other people in the cast, but those are the main people.
Big cast.
Big cast. But this film that you have surprisingly, or maybe unsurprisingly, because you're not a big mob movie kind of guy, you've never seen The Godfather.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that. I mean, for me, there's like a lot of like machoism and bravado about these kind of mob movies. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, like, they're criminals, right? And that you really shouldn't root for them too much. Like, they're killing people, they're breaking the law, all that kind of stuff. I mean, all that kind of stuff. Whether it's, you know, I'm sure in the movie they say like, you know, we're only breaking these laws like gambling and women, which aren't as bad
we
as
don't do the drugs,
right?
Yeah.
You know, take that for, you know, that's for each individual person to kind of take whatever they feel about that stuff. Yeah. But for me, there's always like this bravado and machoism about liking these kind of movies. And that just, it's off-putting to me, right? Mm-hmm. So I kind of steer clear of mob movies because I don't want to like relish in this kind of gangster, mobster lifestyle and all that kind of stuff. So that's really kind of what I find off-putting about all those kind of movies. Does that make sense?
It does.
Cool.
It does.
So Godfather, heard numerous great things about. I mean, I think it's like 9.2 on IMDb out of 10 and all that kind of stuff. You know, just a big movie. You know, so I went in, you know, open eyes, full heart, can't lose. You know, with it, and I thought overall it was really good.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think it's, you know, for me, I probably shouldn't have looked at that IMDb score because I don't think it's like a 9 out of 10 kind of movie to me. I don't think it's that great. And I don't think it's the best mafia or mob movie I've seen. I actually would probably put Goodfellas above this movie, for better or worse. And I think the problem is that to me, this movie feels really pat and rote. And I'm sure it's because I've seen so many movies that have been influenced by it.
Yeah.
And I just know that cinema language so well that this is just not surprising to me, right?
Yeah.
Like I was talking to Kirby and she was like, you know, this is the first time you kind of go behind the scenes and see like the inner workings and not see like, you know, like Bonnie and Clyde where it's all shoot 'em up, gangster. You know, you kind of see them as like a fully fleshed out kind of family.
Yeah.
And I've seen movies that have done that. I've seen Casino. I've seen Goodfellas. I've seen, you know, the Sopranos series. So I've seen the stuff that has stood on the shoulders. So to me, that this movie just kind of feels kind of like, okay, yeah, I get it. It's well done, but there's nothing in it that's really like surprising or shocking or that kind of, you know, treated me that way. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where I am. I wish I would be over the moon about this movie because, you know, we've seen movies like King Kong and Casablanca that I am over the moon, even though it's been, you know, this movie's been 50 years. It's a Wonderful Life. this movie's been 50 years, and those movies have been even longer that I've been over the moon for. So I was really hoping I'd have that reaction with the movie, but that's kind of where I fell this time watching it, 50 years after it came out.
I got you.
So I have some more to say, but I'm curious to where you fall on it. You've seen The Godfather. This is your third time?
No, it's the second. I'm telling you, all three Godfathers I've only seen one time before, so I was revisiting them all for only the second time.
So
not my third time.
What do you think about The Godfather? What do you remember liking about The Godfather, thinking about it? And then what do you think about it this time around?
I don't remember much from when I saw the first three Godfathers, the only three Godfathers, back in the 90s. 'Cause I would guesstimate that I was probably like 19 or 20 whenever I watched the first three. Yeah. And I think I did watch them kind of back to back to back. You're 19, you're 20 years old, you just don't understand that much about life. I feel like I got so much more out of these films now as an older person, as an older gentleman, as an older person. I feel like I can kind of understand. Well, I mean, I'm watching The Godfather, and like a lot of the cast is younger than I am right now. I was like, I mean, obviously Marlon Brando's not, but Al Pacino and guys like that. I'm like, God, I'm like older than all these guys were when they were playing these roles. But I feel like I got a lot more a lot more out of these films watching them this go round. I think Godfather's terrific. I mean, I think it's a really, really, so it's interesting. When I was younger, I thought Godfather Part 2 was better than Godfather, and I think I was kind of influenced by Leonard Maltin because I think he kind of praises Godfather 2 more, and some people do. It's not like that's an opinion that is like, what? Where did that come from? Some people do like Godfather 2. I think at the time I was like, man, Godfather 2 is like so much better than Godfather 1, but I disagree with that now.
I think this one's better than Godfather
I think
2.
Godfather, and spoiler, I think Godfather 2 is good, but I think Godfather is superior to Godfather 2. I mean, I basically think 1 is the best, then 2, then 3, but yeah, I enjoy this film quite a bit. I do see where you're coming from, and I don't really envy you having seen this after having seen so many things that it has influenced. At this point, Marlon Brando is a parody, right? With his yeah, right.
And I feel sorry for De Niro in the second one, who has to
everybody does
bring in those mannerisms,
right? He's got to kind of talk with a rasp a little bit for some reason. I'm like, what happened to his voice? But no, I think this is a really, really terrific film. I mean, it is a saga, and that's why, you and I were talking about after we watched Godfather 1 and 2, you were like, should I watch Part 3? And I'm like, well, I don't know that it's necessarily, imperative that you watch it before we film, but I think you should definitely watch it just because it concludes the trilogy. In this, because it is very much a saga of the Corleone family and kind of what they go through. I like the arc that Al Pacino has in this, and I like how it kind of parallels in Part 2, which we'll talk about on Wednesday. Robert De Niro's Vito,
his dad,
kind of how his dad kind of rises to power. They both begin as these kind of meek, mild-mannered kind of guy. In fact, Robert De Niro's character is described as dim-witted in Part 2 when he's young and he doesn't speak. He's mute. But these guys that are sweet and wholesome, but then they are kind of propelled into this world of violence through murder, because both of them do commit a murder. In the films that brings them into this. I mean, obviously Vito starts the family as the Godfather in Part 2, but in this they want to keep Michael out of it, and he ends up being the head of everything. As time goes on, things
happen to Sonny and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, bad things happen to Sonny, and Tom is too smart. Tom's the lawyer, the law talking guy.
So I will push back a little bit on the things you say, because I think this is kind of where I start not. My enjoyment of the movie starts lessening, right? So it like you said, it's an epic, and I feel like the movie would have been better in my eyes if it was more about Michael, right? Because you kind of it starts out and it feels like it's more of a slice of life, and you're getting all these kind of scenes with Marlon Brando and all that kind of stuff, and it feels like it's mostly about Marlon Brando until he passes away. Then all of a sudden it's Michael's movie, right, and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like if it was more about Michael, that movie would have resonated more with me. The other thing is I really feel like Michael's a blank slate in this movie. I don't feel like they give him a whole lot to emote about. I don't feel like he has a big inner life in this movie because when you first meet him, he's at the wedding. He's dressed up in the military uniform. He has K on his arm, and he's talking about, this is family stuff. I don't want to be part of this family stuff. But you really never understand, like, why he doesn't want to be a part of it. Like, there's no reasoning before it. It's not, I think you find out, two things. One is in the Godfather 2, you get a scene that kind of helps explain a little bit more about his military career, but that's really still kind of vague. But so you don't know if like the reason why he doesn't become part of the family, the reason why he's legitimate is because either A, Marlon Brando doesn't want him in there because he wants to become a senator or some politician, or if it's that he saw this and didn't like what they were doing and wanted not to be a part of. I don't really feel like that's explained. And so like whenever he kind of decides to, kill the people that killed his brother, you're kind of like, I get that, like that need for revenge, but like, what does that do to him? Like, what was that thought process that he went through? Like, is he just looking for revenge? And so when he does that and becomes the Godfather, it's like, what? I don't get any sense of his inner life or what kind of turmoil that causes or any of that kind of stuff, right? He just kind of does it because that's the story. So for me, that lessens the movie because, and I feel like I said the same thing about this with Serpico. So maybe that is just the era of movies that this came out in. But I feel like I would have resonated with me a lot more if I knew where Michael stood a lot of the times along the way of what was happening to him and what he was seeing. Right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Makes sense.
So that's kind of where I push back from what you're saying a little bit because I wasn't getting a whole lot of characterization, a lot of his feelings and thoughts on these things that were kind of happening to him and stuff like that.
Well, I think you hit on it, though. I mean, I do think it's a combination of he doesn't want a part of that life. He wants to be, because he's the only one that enlists in the military. He feels like, fighting for his country is the right thing to do. And his brothers are mad at him because they don't want him to get killed because they like the father, like Marlon Brando's character, they want him to be a governor or a senator or something like that. He's the guy that's not going to be part of the family business. He's smarter than all of them. Obviously Sonny, the James Caan character, is just this muscly, hot-headed, beat 'em up kind of guy. Tom isn't really a son. I mean, he is a son, but he's like the adopted son. Yeah. But and then Frito is kind of presented as almost an idiot.
He's a dimwit, right?
Yeah, he's kind of a dimwit. So other than that, you have the daughter, which is Connie. Put Talia Shire's character.
And she has her own issues with her husband.
Yeah, well, and she's not going to take over the family business, right? I mean, so Al Pacino is the smart one, but they don't want him involved with the business. But then he becomes logically the most. Or the most logical one to be involved with the family once a hit is put on Marlon Brando and he's in the hospital because they'll never see it coming whenever he finally does go to kill Sollozzo and Captain McCluskey in the restaurant that they go eat at. He again, it's like a trap. And I know if Sonny comes and Tom's not going to go. The lawyer, the consigliere, is not going to go. So,
and I feel like that build up to that shot was awesome, like and very cool. But yeah, I don't feel like the movie gives you like he doesn't really wrestle with the fact that he's gonna do it. He's just like, yeah, I'll go in, I'll kill him.
Yeah,
and it's like this whole guy is like living his life on the straight and narrow. All of a sudden, like it's like no, I'll kill this people.
I get the sense out of it, and maybe I'm giving it a pass, but I get the sense out of it that like it or not, it's in his blood. This is in his blood. He is the Corleone. He's in the Corleone family, and I know in that part, if you notice, when he starts to talk about, I can do it. If you give me a gun, whatever, it zooms in on him. It's all these things are taking place in his mind. Yeah. He's going through all this thought process or whatever, but it slowly zooms in on him as he's kind of giving this monologue about how he's going to kill him. I think that's kind of what, and maybe that was. Spelled out better in the book, something like that. But I feel like that was kind of how Francis Ford Coppola approached that. But yeah, it's in his blood. He's a Corleone. So, and I mean, he did fight in World War II, right? I mean, so he has. I don't know that it said he ever killed anybody. I can't remember, but
he did get the Navy Cross. So I don't. I don't know what that's. I haven't done any research, so I don't know how you get awarded that.
Yeah,
but he did.
Nor I. Yeah,
but yeah, I like the idea. I kind of like the idea that it's in his blood. I wish the movie would spell that out a little bit more for me.
Yeah.
Because like I said, that's kind of where it kind of left me a little bit. Was I wanted to see him I wanted to see how all these events affected Michael. Like I wanted him to be more front and center and see all this kind of stuff. And I feel like the movie would be that much better in my eyes if we got to see that, right?
Well, and I think that's why you always got to watch part 1 and 2 at the very least. I mean, again, you don't. It's watching part 3 is not a necessity. I think it is. I mean, just to kind of complete the trilogy. But watching part 1 and part 2 is like a one whole movie. Yeah. And in fact, they have been combined in the past. I wrote it down that at one point they were edited together as just kind of one whole movie called the Godfather saga. Well, that was for TV, and they edited out, some of the more violent parts, and then also as the Godfather epic, which I think was released on home video, which was, obviously not edited because it wasn't shown on network television. But yeah, it really is. Part 1 and part 2 are kind of one movie split into 2 parts. And what you're saying is correct. I mean, it is Marlon Brando's movie. He was nominated for Best Actor. Al Pacino was nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Yeah. So, I mean, Al Pacino is very much a supporting. So was James Caan. So was Robert Duvall. They're all very much supporting players to Marlon Brando's character. He is the main actor in this film. Of course, then he dies. And then Al Pacino gets to take over. And then part 2 is all Al Pacino. And it cuts back and forth between him and Robert De Niro's rise to power as a parallel or whatever. But yeah.
And I think you can kind of take this movie 2 ways, right? Or 2 ways I would approach something like this. One is the fallout and the chaos that happens when you have such a powerful man taken down, right? What happens to the family? What happens to everything? All that chaos and people kind of fumbling around and trying to, place things back together and put order back together. I think that's one movie that could be done with this kind of material. I don't think this movie's necessarily striving for that. I didn't get that. The other one is, the rise of Michael Corleone, how you see him kind of what he thinks of himself and how he presents himself. And then, at the end you have something drastically different. Maybe someone, he can't even look himself in the mirror because of life events and all this kind of stuff. And he gets thrusted into this world he never wanted to be a part of, right? Which I also don't think that what the movie's striving for. But I think in my eyes, and maybe this is not fair, both of those movies would have probably been a better experience for me to watch rather than what we got here, right?
Yeah.
Not saying that this movie's bad. I think it's overall pretty good.
Yeah.
It's just, those are the things like I like in movies, and that's what I think about when I kind of watch these kind of movies.
Yeah. Well, and I like how all 3 of these movies all start off with some sort of celebration. The Godfather starts off with the wedding of Connie. Mm-hmm. Of course, her husband turns out to be an asshole who beats her, but of course he gets his. So this movie starts off with the wedding. Part 2 starts off with their kind of party out. Now they're out in Vegas.
Christian his son.
They're out in Vegas, and then part 3 starts with him being awarded the medal or whatever from the Pope. He's
Catholic
getting some, right. He's
Eucharist?
Sort of
Is it the Eucharist? No,
I don't remember. But they all start off with this, this big kind of celebration of life and happiness, and everybody's kind of. And then, like in the first film, Marlon Brando's got to meet with all these people, even though it's his daughter's wedding day. Yeah. He's got to meet with all these people and talk about favors that he's going to do, and what are you going to do for me, whatever. Part 2 is similar to that, with Michael doing that instead, and part 3 as well. And then I think you mentioned earlier. Kirby was saying, you kind of see behind the scenes. It's the first time you see behind the scenes of these guys' lives and kind of what their thought processes are, what they go through, how do they decide who gets what, and how they're going to mete out justice for this person or that person or whatever. But I mean, I agree. I mean, obviously this is a movie about guys that are bad people. even the police captain is corrupt, right? Even Sterling Haynes' character. I mean, I would say the only kind of blameless people in the movie are the women. Yeah. Because Connie turns a little bit more vindictive later in the other films, but in this film she is beaten by her terrible husband. And then Diane Keaton, who's the teacher that Michael marries, of course, after he's gone to Italy.
She gets ghosted.
After he goes to Italy. Right, he goes away to Italy.
Comes back and he's like, "No, I always loved you."
Yeah.
And then she's like, "What?" And then
Right. My other wife got blown up in a car with a car bomb. Sorry.
Do you want to marry me and join the mob? Yeah. She's like, okay.
But his wife Apollonia that he marries in Italy, is blameless.
Yeah.
Kay is blameless. I would say that the women are the come off the best in this film, right? They're not bad people, but all the men are bad people. But I mean, again, it's just like a film noir or something like that. These are anti-heroes or whatever you want to call them that you root for them, right? I mean, they're killing people, they're strangling people, they're cutting horses' heads off and putting them in people's beds, but you still want these people to succeed.
I'm glad I have context for all these kind of things.
Yeah,
and I want to see a casino-like movie that we saw with the Hollywood producer and the head getting cut off. Like I want to see let's take the theme of Casino but point it at that era, like trying to get Johnny Fontaine or whatever, whatever metaphor or person he's supposed to play in real life. Like I want to see that kind of mob movie. I think that'd be kind of interesting in Hollywood kind of stuff.
Yeah,
around that time.
Yeah, I agree.
Scorsese, let's do it.
Scorsese, let's do it. But I really enjoy this movie. I really enjoy the second one. I mean, we'll talk about it on Wednesday as well. I have a few more problems with the second than I have with this film. But I just, as the movie unfolds, I mean, I'm just interested. I'm riveted. Even though it's 3 hours or whatever, close to 3 hours long. Yeah. Same with the second one. Not maybe as riveted with part three, but still, I like the way that it all kind of unfolds. Al Pacino, gets more time in the second movie once he's kind of become the thing. But again, I think these movies are a package deal. I don't think you just watch one or the other or whatever. I think you have to watch part one and part two to get kind of the whole sense of everything.
Yeah. So this movie was a big deal when it came out, right?
Yes. It was the highest grossing film of 1972. It was a big blockbuster. I think the novel had done fairly well. But yeah, this movie made a lot of money. It was nominated for... First, it was nominated for 11 Academy Awards, but then one got rescinded.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know they do that.
Yeah, well, so the score apparently was too similar. So the score was by Nino Rota, and it was apparently too similar to a movie that he had done previously called Fortunella.
Oh, it wasn't like Psycho with the Reanimator?
Reanimator. It wasn't,
Charles Band.
Well, in this case, he was ripping off himself instead of Charles Band or whatever, ripping off Bernard Herrmann. So they actually did not include that as one of the nominations. So it was nominated for 10 Academy Awards. It was nominated for Best Costume Design. It was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay. Mario Puzo and Francis Ford Coppola, it won that award. Nominated for Best Sound, Best Director for Francis Ford Coppola, but he did not win. Bob Fosse won for Cabaret. Best Supporting Actor, 3 people in the movie: Al Pacino, James Caan, and Robert Duvall. None of them won. Best Film Editing, Best Actor, Marlon Brando. He did win. He did not show up to the Academy Awards. He refused his Oscar. He sent in his place Maria Cruz, better known as Sacheen Littlefeather. She came to accept the award on his behalf.
I'll have to watch that.
He was protesting the way that American Indians were depicted on screen. So he said, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to pick up my Oscar. Well, George C. Scott had refused his Oscar for Patton in 1970. So Marlon Brando was not the first person to
He's like, I'm not one to be stood up by that. Or
yeah, Marlon Brando was like, I can do better. Although he didn't, it's not like he talked like that in real life, but I'm just pretending that when he sat there at home.
I think everyone thinks he talks like that in real life.
He still pretended like he was Vito Corleone. And of course, it won Best Picture that year, 1972. So it won Best Adapted Screenplay, it won Best Actor for Marlon Brando, and it won Best Picture. Those are the 3 awards that it won out of the 10 awards. And I don't know if Francis Ford Coppola was pissed they didn't win Best Director or whatever, but he did win for Godfather Part 2, which we'll get to on Wednesday. I would strongly suggest, if you're a reading type of person, that you pick up the book or check it out from the library, whatever. It's called Easy Riders, Raging Bulls, and it is all about the film industry in the 1970s. It's a fascinating book. There's a lot of insight into the production, the making of The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2. Reading this book, it's a wonder that these movies ever managed to get finished, because it seems like Francis Ford Coppola was constantly out shopping and doing all these other things rather than making a film.
Yeah, I did get the vibe in this one that he was kind of making it up as he was going.
I don't know.
I'd be curious to read that book.
Yeah, no, it's a really good book. Well, because not only does it talk about Godfather films, but it just talks about kind of because the '70s is considered by many critics to be the greatest decade of film ever in the history of film is the 1970s, and it's because of it's just anything goes. The studio system was kind of collapsing at that point. Well, not collapsing. Studios were still around, but you had guys that were running the studios that were young and hip and doing drugs and whatever, and they were giving these maverick filmmakers kind of carte blanche to do whatever they wanted. So Francis Ford Coppola and Hal Ashby and William Friedkin and George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and all these guys were going out and making films with not a whole lot of oversight. And that all kind of came crashing down. They say the demise of that was brought about by Michael Cimino after he made Heaven's Gate, which was a huge financial disaster.
One from the Heart.
No. Heaven's Gate was a big, cost a lot of money, and Michael Cimino, they were like, here, you can have all the money you want because he made The Deer Hunter, and The Deer Hunter was a success and won Best Picture and everything. They gave Michael Cimino a bunch of money to make Heaven's Gate. He made this ridiculously long, like 5-hour long movie, and it bombed. And after that, the studios were like, okay, no more for you guys. So it all kind of came to an end. I mean, that's, again, it's more than just one thing, but Heaven's Gate is typically pointed to as the example of the beginning and the end, or the movie that kind of destroyed all of that creativeness or free-spiritedness, I guess I should say. But Easy Riders Raging Bulls is a great book. You should check it out. The line, I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse, is number 2 on the 100 movies, 100 quotes list that AFI put out. What was number 1? Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn, from Gone with the Wind. So it's number 2 behind that. 97% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, 98% audience score, 2 thumbs up from Siskel and Ebert, and Leonard Maltin gives it 4 stars.
There you go. All right, guys. Well, that was our review on Godfather. We've already talked about what we're going to do Wednesday, but I'm going to let you talk about what we're going to talk about in a couple of days.
Yes, this movie has a second part to it, and it is...
Imagine that.
Yeah, it's The Godfather Part 2, so we're just going to continue on with the Corleone saga. Now that Michael, Al Pacino's character, is in control, they have moved to Vegas. Right. Vegas, baby, Vegas! We'll talk about that on Wednesday, Godfather 2. Be here.
Sounds good to me.
Yep.
All right, well... Let us know how you feel about The Godfather. If you're watching us on YouTube, leave a comment down below. If you're listening to us, shoot us an email. Let us know, realshame@gmail.com. We also answer viewer questions that are sent to us to that email address or left below in YouTube. So please leave us your questions. We'd love to see where you're at and answer those for you. It'd be really cool. Like, subscribe, share the show with your friends, family. Tell them, look at this guy, Adam. He doesn't really care for The Godfather as much as he should, so let's make fun of him. Do that. You have my permission. Why not? That would be really cool if you did that. So stay tuned on Wednesday when we talk about Godfather Part 2, and we'll see you soon, guys. Thank you so much. Bye.